lost my apartment in Midwood.
Good evening.
The landlord said it was the CIA that gave him a call, and that was a lie.
Welcome to Chassidus at K. We'll be starting in a few minutes. Welcome to Chassidus at K, Jonathan.
Thank you. Bruchim Aba'im LeYerushalayim. Buckle your seatbelts, not because we're going for a little trip.
Exactly. Taking ourselves off the election.
That's right. We're going for a little trip.
Taking our mind.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
All right. I just was
Bruchim
writing on
Aba'im LeYerushalayim. Matos is about to set down new, ladies and gentlemen.
Wasn't it the Frierdiker Rebbe who said Machta Eretz Yisrael?
Which is what means what?
Means make here.
Hi,
Eretz Yisrael.
good evening out there. We'll be starting in a few minutes. We're just finishing setting up.
Everywhere you go.
Everywhere you go.
Anyway, you can identify who you are so we can say
All
hello.
right, we are set up over here.
Can I plug this in somewhere? Is that all right? Can I
Sure.
use this as well?
Facebook.
Thank you.
Hello.
There's one right
And
over
we're
here.
just
Thank you so much. Just remind me, because I'll forget.
Chaim, how you feeling?
Good. Hashem, how are you?
Good. Came for the class?
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be a
Better
deep class.
Parshas Vayerah. Vayerah. Awesome.
My dad has been so cool. Radio frequency detectors that didn't ask, apples. I mean, I don't know what family I
Take
came
my
from, and they're
notebook.
both Jewish.
I'm ready.
Yeah, no, it's not a rush. There's just a couple people out there. And I don't think there's anybody on Zoom yet.
Alrighty.
Alrighty.
Alrighty. Oh,
Where's the, here, down here? All right.
right behind there. Yep.
Parshas Vayerah.
Thank you. They came in.
You're welcome. Thank you. In this week's Parsha, one of the major events is the disruption and chaos and immorality going on in Sodom. And God goes down there to see what's going on. So anybody who thinks about this has asked the question. God knows everything, doesn't he? God is everything, isn't he? Why does he have to go down to Sodom to see what's going on? So with this question in mind, we will start to learn what the nature of God. If you could say it's almost a contradiction, right? God is totally above nature. But how does God, what is God? How does he behave? How do we relate to him? And how can we understand this question of him actually, or the idea of him going down to Sodom? So to open up, we'll open up with the word open up. Posach Eliyahu. This is a word from the Zohar. Eliyahu HaNavi is speaking in the Zohar.
When you say
Shmuel, you already have a question? All
when
right.
you say open up, I'm a little curious. Doesn't Lachacha mean to go?
That's last week.
That was last week. We're in
Open
Parshas
up means
Vayerah.
like this.
Oh.
When I want to speak, yeah. Shmuel, when I want to speak, I open up. So it means he opened up his mouth. He opens up his mouth and he said, I'm going to describe God. You, God, I'm going to describe you in this way. Try to, if you can, look inside. Antu Chad, you are one. Valeba Hushman, but you have no number. Antu Dapikas Asatikunim, you are the one who draws forth 10, literally, fixings. 10 ways of fixing yourself up, which we call the 10 spirits. Okay, out there in Facebook land, again, you guys also, please, if you don't understand, ask a question, or let me know what's going on. Same for the people in Zoom. People at the table, I know they won't have any problem asking questions. So, Eliyahu opens up and he says, you are one and you're not with any number. You are the one who brings forth 10 tikkunim, 10 ways of fixing yourself up. And the Zohar goes on and says, and we call these 10 ways of fixing yourself up, 10 tikkunim, the 10 sephiros. To understand this, Lama nikra yud spiros b'shem tikkunim. Why does the Zohar call the 10 spiros tikkunim? Tikkun means to fix. So this, for this we have to first understand the essence of a person's soul. We come across this idea over and over again. The way to understand God is the way to understand ourselves, because we were created in his image. So if we understand something about ourselves, and how we're structured, we'll understand something about God. And why do we care? Well, the reason Chassidus tells us we should care is because we're trying to develop a relationship with God, a relationship of feeling, a relationship that's experiential, a relationship that arouses attributes of love and awe. So we got to get to know the guy. So let's understand something of the Mahus of the Nefesh. What's the essence of the soul? Well, what's the constitution of the soul? The soul itself is a simple light. Simple meaning undifferentiated. Bli hischalkus, without any divisions of seichel umidas, of intellect and emotion. And this that the soul has intellect and has emotion, we call garments. Garments to the soul. It's the way the soul gets dressed. Like you get dressed to go out, so the soul, to go out, to express itself, has these attributes, intellect attributes. These are levushim lenefesh. Nefesh yesh lesechel umidos. The nefesh has sechel and midos, intellect and emotion. Aval ene mahus ve'atzmis nefesh. But that which it has is not its essence.
What is it? What do you mean? What do you mean?
It's an attribute of the soul, right? It's like when you're alone, you don't have to express anything, right? When you're alone with yourself, just in yourself, comes along your interest in expressing something. So what do? You bring something to thought. Where did that thought and speech come from? It comes from that simple essence. So the essence, the thought and speech are the way the soul dresses up. Well, the essence of the soul is absolutely simple.
Doesn't it come from like Tainog and
Tainig is deeper than seichel. Maybe you could say the same thing about Tainig. Tainig is also, it's a very internal, very deep, Tainig, by the way, for those on his pleasure.
Sorry.
It's a very deep part of the soul, but it's still an expression of the soul. It's the soul as it's coming out. As it comes out, it begins to feel some kind of excitement. And then that excitement comes down into a will. It's attached to something. And then that will gets attached to, now let me think about how to get a hold of it. All those things are gradations and outward expressions of what had been there, but in a manner of total simplicity.
Would you say that tapping into that essence is like, I guess maybe the verb would be being?
Being. Simple being.
Simple, just being.
Simple
Can you
being.
tap into that
Yeah.
through meditation?
Let me ask you, this mic over here, you think can pick you up?
Yeah, it's picking me up.
It's
So,
picking you up.
yeah.
Yeah, simple being. That's a good way of looking at it. Being. Being, not behaving. Behavings are the seichel midas of thought, speech, and action.
Right.
Yeah, excellent.
Okay.
Umashikosa betanya, the parentheses on the 5th line, or 6th line.
Okay.
That which is written in the Tanya, shehanefesh atzma mischalek l'seichel umidas. He writes in the Tanya that the nefesh itself, the soul itself, is divided into seichel umidas. Shehem nekroyim atzmius nefesh, and he calls them the essence of the soul. But this is a relative expression. Calling the seichel midas essential is only in relation to something which is more external. But it isn't the real essence. Because these machshava dibur ma'isa, thought, speech, and action, are garments nefradim. They're separate. They're the way that you separate yourself and come out into the world. They're separate, mamish, from the essence of the soul. Shehein b'chinas biyah. Okay, now this we introduce suddenly an analogy, the analog. We're saying to understand God, we have to understand our soul.
Right.
So just as a soul has an essence, and it lowers itself, so to speak, or comes out of that essence and behaves in different manners. So God himself has an essence, and we'll call this essence for the moment Atzilus, even though we know that there's essence deeper than Atzilus. Atzilus is the highest world. And when God exudes, behaves, brings out these 10 spheros with which to build worlds, like the world of Biyah, so that's like the relationship between the essence of the soul to its garments.
Okay.
Okay? Shalzeh Omar, on this it says, this, to use your expression, moving from being to behavior, that those behaviors are called garments. And Omar Levushin Tekinus Lon, and the Zohar says, garments you have fixed for them, for the worlds. In other words, for the worlds to exist, worlds are all embedded in the essence, in the being of God. But for them to come out and be expressed as individual entities requires God to, as it were, put on a shirt, a dress, clothe himself in these garments. So the garments are levush, separate garments from the husa nefesh, from the essence of the soul, shehen lechinas biyah, which are the way God expresses Himself in the lower worlds. Shalzeh amar, on this it says levush and lechinas, that you make garments. The inam biyah, what are the garments? The garments are the way in which He channels His energies into the lower worlds. Aval seichel v'amidos, but His upper powers, seichel and midos, im yesh shehem b'chinas levushim, even though they are also garments, en levushim nefradim mamish. They're not really separate. Just like thought.
Of which part? Of what?
Of what?
Sorry, which ones are not nefradim?
The seichel and the midos. Seichel and midos, right?
Right, but the seichel and midos of what?
Of the seichel and midos, we got three levels here. We got absolute essence.
Mm-hmm.
We have seichel and midos, right? And then we have thought, speech, and action.
Right.
Okay. Try. Essential being, everything that will ever come out is there, but in a totally undifferentiated. We call it peshitas. Can't be
Right.
Comes forth the first level, seichel and midos. Still, you're not out of yourself. Seichel is intellect. It's in your head. Midos is how you're feeling, right?
Right.
Then, so those two garments, seichel and midos, because they are, after all, external, more external in essence, are not separate from Him, not because they're still part and parcel of you yourself. They haven't yet separated out from yourself. So they're ein levushim nifradim. They're not separate garments, mamish. Elokamei bechinas kelim de'atzilus. The way that, think about yourself, the way that you think. I'm looking at Jonathan, he's at the end of the table here. I really don't know what's going on in his mind because I'm not a mind reader.
Right.
Most folks don't have visibility into somebody else's thoughts
My mother talked to
because
me
the
about
thoughts are inside.
Unless you have physical facial manifestations of thought patterns like
Sometimes the face can
My
be
mother
real.
talked to me about that in the
sometimes the
60s.
face can be real.
long before I read
He's saying
National
you
Security.
can read faces much easier than you
Eye
can read
movement
heads.
as well,
Yeah.
facial expressions,
But nevertheless,
like REM's.
I'm reading your face now, and your face is concentrated and it's very paying attention. But what is absolutely going on in your mind, I have no idea. So
With
let's
enough
make the
information, you
point.
almost can't do it with predictive analytics.
Let's make the point though. So thought and midos, the way you think and the way you feel, you're not yet expressing that until you come out with something, speech and action, right? So those are called internal garments that are not really separate. So in other terms, they're called kelim, vessels to receive the flow from the inner aspects of yourself. And in God's case, when we talk about God, these are the vessels of Atzilus. The vessels of Atzilus, the Zohar says, and I'm quoting now as in our text, he and his kelim are one. In Atzilus, the vessels don't hide, they reveal. They're very thin. They have little interference. And therefore, even though they're called essence, they're not real essence. Because real essence is pshitus.
Right.
Okay? Good? Next bracket. You see, I bracketed the whole thing. The Inyan Tikkun. Now we get to the word Tikkun. So far we've talked about spheros, the garments, and the Zohar called them Eser Tikkunim. So the word Tikkun, which means fixed, fix up, is Miloshin Tachshit, is from a language that means like a piece of jewelry. Shemistakeshet, that enhances the beauty of someone. Doesn't cover the beauty, like a old shirt covers the body, or any shirt covers the body. It enhances the body. So we're going to now distinguish between tikkunim, which are the upper level spheros that are close to the skin, like you wear a piece of jewelry, close to the skin, right? And some piece of jewelry, like maybe an ankle bracelet, you never take off. You take it in the shower as well. It's almost like a part of you. So there's a tikkun. The Indian tikkun, it's a piece of jewelry, some mishkachet, and it enhances the beauty. And a person gets excited about it. Like a Rolex is a guy's best friend. Or there was also jewelry, a diamond is a girl's best friend. There's something you go get a piece of jewelry or a nice man or woman there's something exciting about it. So it has a certain few qualities here. There's tikkun. It beautifies, it enhances, it causes a revelation of something rather than a concealment, and it causes a certain excitation. So a person who wears this piece of jewelry is united with this piece of jewelry. It becomes almost megufay mamish, part of his body. As I said, like an anklet bracelet or something that you never take off. Ukameha nefesh imaguf. Now he says this little analogy that we had about jewelry in relation to a body is like the relationship between the soul and the body. Even though the body is a garment to the soul, again, it expresses, it's the vehicle through which the soul can express itself. Nevertheless, what goes on with the body affects the soul. When the body stubs its toe, it produces a feeling in the soul, a feeling, we call it pain. So there's a close connection between this piece of jewelry and the soul, like the soul in the body.
I agree in that.
Hmm? Anything? Okay. Can I go ahead?
Yes, sorry.
We're telling a story here, so let's go
No, I
ahead.
just had supposed to be on the.
Over to the next paragraph, over to the next side of the page. Just follow the brackets. Just follow the brackets. But the soul itself, it's above all these levels. It's above seichel and midos. It's above any kind of differentiation really whatsoever, the soul. As we've said many times, if you could look into the soul, you wouldn't see thought, you wouldn't see speech, you wouldn't see all those things. They exist in the state of Chassidus, and that state is called much, much higher than any of the garments. Because seichel, intellect, and emotions, they are subject to change. Midos have smallness and largeness, meaning what? A small child, his love or her love is for small things. And seichel itself, the older a person gets, the intellect is developed. And this whole notion of change is not relevant at all in the essence of the soul, and what the soul really is. Because the essence of the soul, is not something that's subject to change. It doesn't get changed by anything that happens to the body. Because the essence of the soul itself, the essence, is not invested in the body. Certain rays from the soul, effusions from the soul, like thought, speech, and thought, like seichel and midos, are invested in the body. But the essence of the soul never gets touched. What?
And what is the necessity of the neshama going through a cleanse after a person passes away?
It's the external stuff. It's all the external stuff.
Or is it like shedding layers?
It's like, you're familiar, I know you were, because we talked last time, Yechida, Chai, and Neshama.
Right.
So there's the lower levels that need to be cleansed. Yechida never gets tarnished.
Right.
Never gets
So we're talking about the yechida here.
That's Yechida.
Okay.
And we said, remember last week we said Yechida is even not really the highest. It's the
Right.
receiver for something higher, right? So those higher levels, those atzmistika levels, where you can't even
So
call it
then why is he
Yechida.
using the lashon nefesh?
He's just calling this soul. It's a good question. In Chassidus, nefesh can be a carry-on for the soul. Doesn't necessarily mean the madrega.
Yeah, but then it would be technically inaccurate to say that because we know that if
It doesn't mean nefesh in the madrega of nefesh, like the
Okay.
lowest level of soul. It means the soul. The soul, and here meaning the essence of the soul, doesn't get touched.
right,
But
I'm
it
saying it
is-
doesn't change, but
Yeah.
but neshamas do change. What happens when a person becomes a rasha?
No, when a person comes to Russia, he doesn't change his soul. His soul is the same soul that he
That
has.
the
His,
person
his
becomes rich,
behaviors,
it's just the garments.
the garments are changing. Yeah. So even forget, before even thinking about
Right.
when your soul goes up, your soul in the body is your soul. It's the soul that you got from heaven is placed in your body, and it remains the soul. And everything that happens outside the body affects that soul in its
So then
external
it shouldn't
levels.
affect, when they say, oh, in Gan Eden,
Well,
Tachta and Elyon, and the whole thing, going up in levels. What is this? What?
Well, because they're infinite levels. So the soul also can rise infinite levels.
But if your soul doesn't change down here, what level is it going to go to up there? Like, there's no.
The soul is going to be the soul. It's like you're going into different rooms. You, same you, going into different rooms.
But if everyone's soul is the same and
No,
untarnished.
not everyone's
Like,
soul is the same.
But if it becomes untarnished, then there's nothing you can do to get into a different room. It doesn't matter.
If you get into the room that you've earned down here below.
How do you
Right.
earn something if it doesn't affect, if nothing you do down here below
Because
affects
again,
your
we're not
neshama?
talking about the essence of the soul. He says during yesterday's Tanya, 2 days Tanya, the ruach and the neshama levels are affect. Gan Eden Tachton is
Right.
the ruach, Gan Eden Elyon is the neshama. But the soul itself, the essence of the soul, never gets changed. Your essence is who you are, essentially who you are. The expressive levels of your soul can go through all kinds of changes.
So what earns you the particular room? The challenges that are faced to your soul, the metamorphosis that your soul takes place externally rather than
I didn't hear the
essence.
first part of the question. I'm sorry.
What determines, as Esther said, which room you'll be admitted
Right.
to?
What determines which room you're in?
If it's predetermined
You've got
by
two
your
things.
essence and not by the
No,
trials
no,
and
no, no, no.
tribulations or the
No,
development.
that's not true. The essence of the soul remains the essence, but the room that you get to has to do with what you have done with your soul while it was in the body.
That implies
The trials and
that there's a
tribulations.
distinction.
But it's, yeah, it's
I'm trying to understand analytically, Rabbi. And once my brain starts functioning and thinking like that, that's why I'm asking, not because of.
we'll put it this way. Let me maybe just try this.
Okay.
Different rooms, right? Person Jonathan, right? Jonathan's Jonathan. He can have different experiences though, but that won't change the essential Jonathan. He can go into a club, a nightclub, and have an experience
I don't
there.
go there so much, Rabbi.
He can go into a synagogue.
He's not hurt. Okay.
I like to
go
go
to
to
a synagogue
synagogues.
and have an experience there. I'm just trying to use extremes, but nothing changes the essential Jonathan. All it's changed is the experience Jonathan.
If he goes into a nightclub, he'll sit by himself.
So
and
nothing
I'll pretty late,
changes
he'll
the
come back
essence
and
of the
talk.
soul, but the
Right.
experience of the soul, that is which level of Gan Eden it's in, changes.
Okay. I'll just
So
take it as is.
so Rabbi, how he utilizes his soul is a consequence of the challenges that he's presented with, correct? And how he utilizes. But what is the third element? Not an alienated third element that's going to determine how his soul is able to lit more dead to approach those challenges of the circumstances.
What determines how you
how you respond? If it's
how
not
you,
the
how
essence
you
of the
respond
soul,
to challenges?
yes. Is it a
I'll
third?
tell
Is
you
it a
exactly.
seichel? Is it seichel?
I'll tell you exactly. Your seichel will get involved, but what determines how you respond to challenges is the extent to which you are in touch with the essential godliness of who you are. Because let me just finish that. Because if you
That's
are,
the essence.
if you're in touch with the essential godliness, or even love, but it doesn't have to be the essence,
Despite the
that you
distraction.
are a godly entity. That, put it this way, someone had put it nicely. I think we see if you like it. That we are not really physical entities. We're spiritual entities placed in a physical shell. That's what we are. And to the extent that we get in touch with that, and the deeper we get in touch with the levels of our spiritual emanations, which come from God, we become more aligned, connected with God. And the more connected you are consciously with God, the more you behave.
Pursuant to that conscious understanding, and the essence,
Pursuant to
and the
that,
essence has
yes.
a yivat truth. It has a manifestation point that relates itself as you're growing closer to
So it all has to do with the very two simple things. His blindness, the more you get conscious of it, meditation on who you really are and what you really are, and the more you are able to cultivate almost what I would call like a poetic awareness of the infusion of divinity that's in you and in everything. And with those kinds of things, you can gain strength to resist.
That's why it's very
the shell.
important to build up a resistance to distraction. Now I understand why certain technology is utilized by not very nice or ethical people to hurt other
Okay.
individuals.
So let's move on. Baradar Zeh, we're down in the second paragraph. And there, Yuvin Gam Lamayla. Having said what we just said quite lengthily, and I hope it helped,
Mm-hmm.
about the soul, we can now apply this to Hashem. Okay? Again, people out there in Facebook, I'm not looking at you too much. But I hope you're hearing well, and I hope you will be asking
this working?
questions if you're along the way. Yeah, I haven't heard it from anybody from Zoom. I don't know if there's anybody in Zoom. It's not worth trying.
Okay.
They'll speak up if they want to.
Jonathan, how are you?
Jonathan has just arrived, a new arrival.
Jonathan and Jonathan.
John and Jonathan.
No, both Jonathans. Jonathan and Jonathan.
Okay.
How are you, Jonathan?
You're just in time for the new paragraph, John. So just as we've understood that the soul has an essence, you with me? And the soul has layers of expression, so with this we can understand Hashem himself. That is a human gam lamayla. Follow the brackets. Ki hine ant hu hakim. The Zohar tells us, please. The Zohar tells us, please, Antu Hakim, you are wise, but not with a known wisdom. Antu, now when it refers to you, and the you which is without a known wisdom, is referring to God's essence. In other words, you have wisdom, God, deep inside of your simple self. Simple meaning undifferentiated self. But at that stage, it's so deep in your essence that no one can touch it, feel it, know it. So you are one without any knowable wisdom. You are a wise one without any knowable wisdom. So it says Ant, when it says I, that's the Or Ein Sof. That's the light of the infinite itself, which is called Hakim, which is called wise one. The light of Chokmah as it's drawn into the revelation of Chokmah. So when we're talking about the Or Ein Sof, and we're calling it Hakim, wise one, that's the source of Chokmah. And from it comes the Chokmah in the lower worlds. It's flipped to the person. The person has a certain intellectual capability. Where does it come from? It comes from the essence of his soul. Everything that you are comes from the essence of your soul. You choose what you decide to reveal in it, but it's all coming from the essence of your soul. So if someone sees you open your mouth, I'm sorry to pick on you, Jonathan, but you're there, and you say something really bright, I know that
somebody named She will try to dumb me down with certain
whatever
technology.
Whatever they'll do with
They'll
that
have
is
me
something
killed,
else.
because
But
you
you
couldn't stand my
know
existence.
that you have this ability
By any
in
means.
your soul. But when it's deep in your soul, it's not visible. But it's the source of everything that's going to come from the soul. So similarly, God.
Existence.
When we
You know,
speak, let me just finish this.
Sorry.
When we speak about God, Antu Hakim, you are wise, v'lei b'chochma yediyah, and not with a known wisdom. We're speaking about his potential to reveal wisdom. And where does he first reveal that? In the world of Atzilus. He reveals it in the world of Atzilus. It comes from his essence.
How do you know something is wise without seeing the wisdom?
You don't. You can't know he's wise without seeing it. I mean, we attribute wisdom to him because the Torah tells us he is, but no, you can't know it until you see it. You can't just like you can't say someone has artistry in him or her until she or he
Right.
exhibits it. You don't know.
But the Torah is Hashem's wisdom. But so then
Yeah,
how
that's a
did...
revelation,
So,
yeah.
but then I'm sure Avram Avinu, before the Torah was written or they received the Torah on Har Sinai,
Yeah.
I'm sure he saw the wisdom just based off of the creations, right?
Well, he was a smart guy.
That is so
Right.
beautiful.
And
When I became about
He
Tshuva,
began. He
I
began
was in
to,
Moss Prep School. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
You know, and I was surrounded by non-Jews, and I'm Jewish, and I understand. I said, what more of an abstract idea, the revelation to Avraham Avinu of En Dmut Laguf, there's no image or physical limitation. And I said to myself, you know, a revolutionary concept where Hashem took someone that had that concept, a closer understanding of Hashem. And people says race never was racist. And from there, he created a people,
Sure.
right, that had the capability to grow closer in their perception or understanding Hashem the same way, because if you didn't have the innate capability, what did Hashem do? The Ivri, right? The other side. He created a people, and it's funny because people used to argue. He has to question whether or not Abraham Avinu and the Avot kept the Torah Kulo before the Torah was given, and many said yes, right?
Yes.
And many said and that was and that was so. That's so. Then why do we need the revelation at Sinai? That's a kasha always.
It's kasha because
From
he's asking a question. If Avraham Avinu knew and all the
and
fathers,
Yaakov, Isaac and Yaakov.
all the fathers and mothers, and
Imahot v'Abahot.
knew the Torah before it was given, why did we need to learn the Torah?
Well, one of the proofs is that 600,000 people were there, because there's other religions that were based off of one person.
Right, we were there, but he wants to know what changed. What
Why
was
was
the
it necessary to have a Torah
I'll
Ketubah
tell you
in the
that.
oral play if they're already keeping the Torah before? Is it Masoros?
Oh, that was that question
Yes,
of elevating what's down here below.
Well, that's where we're going.
Right.
The
the 49
Torah that
levels of
they
Tumah,
listen
right?
to me. The Torah that they kept, please. The Torah that they kept was not the Torah that had to do with bringing holiness into physical things. There was no change in physical things. They kept the Torah in the sense that they were aligned with what God wanted. But what happened at Matan Torah was a hugely important, different experience where this holiness became invested in
Beautiful.
a plant.
That's beautiful. A
And
plant. Don't
now-
say a plant. Come from
For
me.
example,
A plant. Please
A
don't
plant.
say that. Oh, please don't.
plant. I don't mean
Okay.
please, a spy. He's thinking
Okay.
of plants.
I mean, like the inanimate object of a plant. Gosh.
My spy. You gotta write some books, some comic books.
Mm.
Okay. So we got it.
Please go on.
Yeah.
Continue
So-
with what you're saying. So the
So-
kedusha that was infused.
What happened in Matan Torah was Kedusha was infused in Gashmias. And from that day on, as Esther said, the avoida became to occupy ourselves with physical things to release the
And that
Kedusha.
became the
But
underlying
let's not
spark.
go, because this
which
is
was-
a really
which was-
sidetrack.
May I ask you, wait, was
Okay.
that the underlying spark that was forcing the physical world to eventually develop into a spiritual realm to go closer to Hashem?
I'm going to take that off.
Sorry, okay.
I'm going to take that offline. The point we want to make here, that's online, is that the essence of God is the source of obviously everything. But as you said, Esther, the everything doesn't. We don't know about the everything until the everything is revealed. And He reveals Himself in the Torah. He reveals Himself in our current context in the 10 spheres. He reveals something of His expressive nature.
It's beautiful.
Vehine, the last bracket on this page. This Inyan, this idea that we're talking about, will be understood, Yuvin, al derek moshel, by way of an example, Mimash Omer Zal, what our sages have said. Our sages have said the following. Ein l'cho kol esek. There is no blade of grass that doesn't have a mazel, a constellation above it, that says grow.
You mean a malach?
A mazel, the expression is
Says a
mazel.
You're saying a mazel, Rabbi?
Mazel.
A mazal or a
It's not
destiny?
written in
A
the
destiny.
Ein l'cho kol esek sholeh mazel.
I thought it was
Doesn't-
a malach.
No,
Really?
yeah, it's mazel.
The whole time I'm thinking
But
it's a
I'll tell you
malach.
why
That
you
tells us
thought it
the
was
real.
Malach. Because you learned a little Chassidus.
Right.
Okay. And you learn that the physical constellations, which are the mazolas, right, have spiritual energies behind them that empower them. And these are the malachim.
No, that's
But
not
the-
what I learned.
Wait, are you talking about the mazel or the
But the
malachim?
expression from Chazal
Is mazal the destiny or the direction that
no,
they
not
have?
destiny, not destiny.
Not destiny.
Mazal means constellation.
So you're actually talking about the actual constellation.
When you say Mazel Tov, what you're effectively saying is you should have good astrological energies. I
Interesting.
mean, I
you
hate to
that.
say it that way because it makes it sound.
When I
but that's
used to
what you're
think of
saying.
mazal, I thought it was a teleological
But you know, I
direction.
want to tell you something, and this is a very nice little board, I think from the Rabbi Avi. You can almost quote me that it's from him. So it says there's no blade of grass that doesn't have a mazel up above that strikes it and says grow. And then there's an expression from about Jews, ein mazel liyisrael. The mazoles, the constellations,
That's
don't
right.
rule
That
over
comes
the
from Abraham.
Jews. So the Rabbi Magi says there is a mazel to the Jews, but you know what it is? Ayin. He reads ein mazel Yisrael, that the ayin is the mazel to Yisrael. The essence of God penetrates
Beautiful.
every Jew in the Yechidah Shebenefesh.
Interesting.
The constellations don't have any effect on us.
I always learned that you could, that they do, but you can rise above it.
You can change your mazel.
I always thought there was Abraham Avinu when he said your children will be as the stars of the heaven. I mean, I'm just asking the same. You said about mazel because they looked up and said your goral, your destiny is above the mazalot, is
Your
above
destiny is above the
is above. It comes from the Kadosh Baruch Hu directly.
Right. Now, it's an interesting thing to think of just aside. There's no blade of grass that doesn't have a mazel, which answers a lot of question that a particular friend of mine who's an atheist and a smart guy, really smart guy, asked. He said, "You see all these stars? They're uncountable. And you're telling me that that's just window dressing for us to enjoy a planet Earth with the one up in the sky?" So I said, "No. Every single one of those uncountable constellations manages one of the uncountable blades of grass that are down here, and the uncountable grades of sand, and the uncountable leaves on trees, and that's why it's so vast."
Is that like a Avodah Zarah?
Because
think that way.
it's called astrology.
Is that why? Is that a Avodah Zarah?
Astrology for us is Avodah Zarah,
Avodah Zarah,
for
yeah.
sure. Yeah, because Ein Mazel Yisroel. But the Mazolas control, they're the machinery. The angels are, here we put it this way. Let's go a very simple.
It's not registering. If you're saying it's Avodah Zarah, how is it Avodah Zarah? But then there's no Mazel for Yisrael, so why are we even giving?
We're not subject to it.
Why do you even
why
give
is
it
it-
legitimacy or
Yeah,
credence?
why is it exactly?
That's
Why
exactly
is
what
there
I feel the
legitimacy to something that's considered
And
Avodah
it's only on
Zarah?
religious
I
fanatic,
didn't say it's
like
legitimate.
Israel left years ago,
I mean,
right?
there are astrologers who can legitimately. I don't mean that it's legitimate in terms of worship, but they can understand what's going on there, and as a result, tell you, not us Jews, but tell non-Jews something about what they
Yeah,
are.
but that's like Keshet, isn't it, Rabbi? Isn't that a
When I
Avodah
say it's
Zarah?
legitimate, I mean there's a
Rabbi,
truth,
isn't it like
truth to
isn't
it.
that mask? If I may be so bold with my very to quote Errol Flynn, and I just ask, and my non-Jewish friend used to use that expression, so I sound like I was Wild Bill Donovan during the Second World War, or James Bond. Isn't that really what you're doing? Is you're taking a concept from a non-Jewish world. I think the argument would be probably that the non-Jewish world couldn't come to understanding of the essence of Hashem being in control of everything that's happening. So the way they would look at intersaries between the Kadosh Baruch Hu and man, or the world as we see it, they'd also look at physical manifestations of the intersaries, like
That's how they look at it.
constellations.
I'm not saying it's a true
and
religion.
stars. That's why.
It
That's why.
came
he
from,
was-
it comes from
and
Sefer
even by
Yitz-
recognizing it, she's saying it's not a good thing because you're giving credence to a physical manifestation, which is saying has a
It's
koach
operating.
on itself.
There is credence. It's operating.
There is
you
credence to
can't
it. It
worship
comes
it.
from Sefer Yetzirah. I don't know why we're considering it as something that's Avodah
Both
Zarah.
Coming out again.
If you worship
Back to
it,
life.
I didn't. If
Oh,
you
okay,
worship
fine.
it, it's
Okay,
Avodah
fine.
Zarah.
But there is a credence even to Jewish
is.
people. But the what I've learned is that there is a credence, and that if you let it, and that if you look at it from that perspective, it's like Ayin Haraz, right? The Rebbe always said, if you don't believe in Ayin Haraz, you won't get an Ayin Hara. You just say, instead of Bli Ayin Hara, you say Baruch Hashem, right? So if you don't give it
Credence.
energy, it won't have energy over you.
So maybe that's what it means. Ein Mazel Yisroel. That we can. And
That we
that's-
can be
that's what-
above it.
that
I
we
think
can be
that's
above.
it's
We
yeah.
can be above.
Okay.
And the Mazriches and
There's
the
no way
He
to
says, what's
separate-
above it? The iron. We can connect with the iron. We can connect with the essence. Okay, so we're now going to take a little journey into trying to understand
Okay.
how it is that very refined and out of our realm of normal existence spirituality or godliness, how it gets distilled into physical, because it does. It gets one contraction after another. So here's the muscle. The last bracket. We started this last bracket on the page. That's where we get into all this discussion. In Yuvin, it's understood. Al derek muscle mashim rezal ein lecho kol. They said no blade of grass. That there is no blade of grass that doesn't have a muscle that strikes it and says grow. That's the end of that unquoted piece. Ugoveim al govea, and this goes higher and higher and higher into the structures of angels, and even higher and higher and higher. The hare hatapuach. So let's look at an apple. Hatapuach hagashmi, a physical apple. Yesh be motikus or masikus. It has sweetness, and the pasuk says, "V'chayech oichel yita." The taste of the food is on my palate.
Palate, you said?
Palate.
Palate,
V'im nema sheyesh bo koyach hatzameach asher ba'oretz tam umasikus gamkein. Would you then say that this sweetness exists in the earth? That it comes from the earth, right?
Or is this in your
So
palate?
wait a minute. So if there's sweetness in the apple, and the apple comes from the earth, I should be able to taste the earth.
Mm-mm.
No, but you can't, right?
There's the
So
potential.
you wouldn't
for it.
say that, right?
There's a potential in the earth to create the
So
apple.
Gan came Peshita. So it's also simple when it comes to the mazel. That the mazel, Eina be'erech l'muhus, is a klal. The mazel is not at all of the same substance as the blade of grass or the fruit that it's directing energies to. It's two different worlds, right?
Right.
And this goes on. So you see, now if you go up and up and up, which is I think what we're going to do.
So the direction
Ella,
of drawing of the blade of
Ella,
grass.
here's, let's
is-
please
is-
follow.
I'm sorry.
Jonathan, you're not looking at the
No, but I'm
page.
listening to it. I'm trying to conceive, conceptualize it, and put it together, not to set you off.
I keep arguing, trying
I'm
to
not arguing,
convince
I'm just
you.
asking-
No, I'm trying to convince you, not arguing. It's good to see the words. So where does the sweetness come from? Where does the sweetness come from? We already got I think, clear that there's a source to the plant, to the
That's what
apple.
you're talking about,
It's
right?
in the dirt, but there's no sweetness that you can taste there. There's a source to the power of growth, which is in the earth, but you can't touch that at
You
all.
want to see reaching
right?
out to the muzzle.
There's a koyach hatzameach in the earth. You can't touch that at all. So you're going to go all the way up, and the sweetness is going to be nimsha, top of the page, mechesed, from the spira of God's kindness. Umegavura, and if it's a bitter thing, it's going to come from His bitterness.
Green apples.
The green apple, right, comes from the gavura, or a little of both,
Right.
a little mix, a little of teferis. And these are spiritual, totally spiritual things. Yet the spiritual traverses levels upon levels and traverses its own existence as a spiritual and becomes invested in a physical.
From the source.
Raksha histalshus v'seder and medregas. It's just that it's descent and its order of coming down from medrega to medrega, acha medrega, one level after another. In that process, that spiritual, that chesed, the spirit of chesed, God's kindness, if it's sweetness, it's the kindness, God's kindness becomes nisgashmu, becomes physicalized, until that chesed, from that level of chesed comes sweetness.
In the earth, and then it manifests
In
itself
the
in the
apple.
sweetness of the apple, correct?
Well, the earth still doesn't have the taste.
No, but it's the process from
It's
the
the
earth
process,
up.
but it's
Yes.
coming through the earth.
The earth,
It's
that's what I'm
coming
saying,
through
yes,
the
from the
earth.
source, through the earth, yes.
I love
it's
it.
manifesting
Even though there's
itself.
no comparison at all, you cannot compare the sweetness in an apple to chesed of Atzilus. We're not yet talking about Hashem. We're talking about His
His
tikkun,
chesed, his qualities.
His sephiros, his
Spheres,
qualities,
yes.
right.
The manifestations
Good.
of qualities.
Mikol Makom, nevertheless, it's from the same stuff. We see many different kinds of sweetness, many kinds of sweetnesses, matikas beruchnias, right? So just like there are many sweetnesses in Gashmias, there are many sweetnesses in ruchnias. For instance, the sweetness of the delight of a davar chachma, a new idea, sweet, or shel davar chachma, v'hu gam kein mesichas, which is also sweetness, v'chein tanik shel nigun, the sweetness of a song.
That I can relate to.
Yeah, I'm sure you can.
Yeah.
But is the sweetness of the song, Rabbi, coming because of the connectivity between ourselves and Hashem or his spheres?
It's not so much because of, but
Because
it's
I'm
not
trying to
about, it's not
understand
about
how
our
that-
consciousness, but just
No, I'm saying not the consciousness,
Yes,
the
raw
dikul, the
fact,
connection.
the raw fact that we're created in His image. Our soul powers are analogous to His divine powers, and just as He has a spirit of chesed, we have, in the
So when we
divine,
sing
right arm
songs
is the
of praise,
chesed,
like
right?
David Melech
So
Yisrael,
as a result of that, that sweetness which is in Atzilus comes down and down and down, and comes into our soul, and then our soul expresses it.
to Hashem.
Like the tree grows an apple, we sing a song.
Like the Tehillim, David Melech singing sweet
Jehu
songs.
min
to HaKadosh
hakoil, which
Baruch Hu.
song is from the voice. Hayotzi min halev, which comes out from the heart, which is bechinas midos. So that's the mid of chesed. V'lochein, and therefore, kama v'kama yuridas v'istalshus nasim mesikas gashmi. Through many different descents, it finally plops into an apple or a song or a beautiful thought and becomes a physical sweetness.
No, through the soil, right?
For the plant. It's
Through the soil,
not the song.
yeah.
Not
But
the
from the
song.
soil up.
Yeah, that's the plant. That's the apple.
Okay.
The song is from the heart. and the sweet thoughts from the brain.
I'm looking from the process where you talk about mazal and how it and that comes from the essence when the earth.
We got it. You're right. Hagam she'hefresh ve'hevdol rabanim. Even though there's a huge gap between chesed of atzilus and the sweetness of a song. Huge gap, right? The kach ro'im b'chinas chokma. Similarly, that we took chesed, now we'll talk chokma, the sphere of chokma. Shefigam kin gavul me'al gavoy al. It all also has up. V'hagam she'achokma debriya. And even though, now we'll talk about worlds, even though the chokhmah of the world of Bria, one down from Atzilus, it's not at all comparable. It's not like wisdom down here below. Nevertheless, the chokhmah of Bria, high spiritual world, is the source and root to the wisdom which was revealed down here. Also Chokmah B'Atzilus. Even though that's wisdom not knowable, in other words, it's not even materialized yet, at all, not even spiritualized yet. It's a source of a source. It has a source of a source. In other words, that level which is not materialized at all is the source of Chokmah B'Atzilus, which is the source of Chokmah Bria, etc., all the way down
What's the
until you
distinction,
have wisdom.
Rabbi, if I may ask you, between the sweetness that's manifest in us singing praise to the Kadosh Baruch Hu and the sweetness that becomes manifest in the apple? What's the distinction? Do we have the Pirat or Hofshit to make? I mean, you say that the plant that grows the apple
No,
has
just
sweetness.
stop, John. You don't need to go any further. Think about it. Is it not different, your experience of the sweetness in a sweet apple, than when you listen to a sweet song?
Of course, but both of them are manifest from Hashem raising Himself, and our singing is manifest in our consciousness and our praise of Hashem, which is towards that and the plant is more of a process. I mean, they're different.
Sure.
Although you could say that they're rooted in a similar source or the same source.
His point is, you're looking at the difference, the similarity that he's saying. They're both have it taking place in the physical world.
And they're
the
both
song
towards
is
the
taking
sweetness.
place through a physical heart and mouth and lips.
Yes.
And the apple is taking place through a tree, etc. His point is they're all physical, and that sweetness, all of those sweet physical things come from Chesed,
from Hashem,
an attribute of Hashem.
An attribute of Hashem.
And the attribute of Hashem
comes from Hashem.
is buried into his Peshitas.
That's right. That's
Avo, lies antu chakim, but since he is wise, in other words, that's part of who he is in essence. And his wisdom is manifest when it draws out the infinite light into the sphere of Chokmah. Then Chokmah, as it were, comes out from nothing. The gap is so great between Atzmos and the Spheros that it's like a Yesh Ma'ayin, something from essence and Spheros, being and behavior, that it's like the expression Chokmah me'ayin temotzei. He doesn't explain only, but he explained it another place. Temotzei is Lashon found. Chokmah is found from nothing, when you least expect it, because you don't know where it came from. You have no idea where it came from.
Like an epiphany, you're saying.
It's an epiphany, right? And that epiphany it's a great word. Not only a great word, but it's a good example of Yesh Ma'ayin. Something, I got something, but no idea.
Just came out of nowhere.
No idea. No. Yeah. Okay.
It's a gift.
It's a gift. It's a gift. Or a matzia. Chokmah me'ayin tematzia. It's something I happen to find. Therefore, the expression of Chokmah from God's essence is a lowering of himself.
Lowering of the what?
A lowering. The expression of God's Chokmah or
Right.
any attribute of himself from its simple Peshitas is a lowering of himself. Shehu Yerida Gedayla. It's a great descent in front of him and compared to him.
Aren't attributes always a lowering? The way you would analyze it from our perspective would be a lowering. Where you're saying a manifestation which is closer to our understanding, a lowering, an alienation from itself, a lowering. I understand what you're saying in the direction.
It's lowered from his perspective.
From his, yes. Because it's an attribute or a manifestation.
Yep. V'zehu Lashon Atzilus. You guys out in Facebook land, you there? I see you people. You must be really concentrated. The thing about Facebook, you don't know if they've come and gone, right?
Right.
You just take a view and see you later. All right, but it's good to see you there, and we're nice to hear from you. Also, I don't know, did we get any? Did we get any? No, nobody joined the Zoom. Okay. So, that's the story, and we'll talk one more little piece of this. So we have essence, we have Atzilus, and the lower worlds. What's Atzilus? There's a whole
The lower
lesson
worlds?
Atzilus, huh?
Of the lower worlds or in
No,
general?
we have essence, 3 levels: essence, Atzilus, and Biyah.
Right. Okay.
Okay, 3 worlds. Now he's asking, when Chokhmah becomes expressed out of essence, the first expression is the world of Atzilus. Now, Vehine Loshen Atzilus. What does it mean, Atzilus? It has a derivation in Chumash, actually. It's Loshen Yerida. It means to come down. V'hashpala, from a higher level. V'hashpilas atzmai, to lower oneself. Ki'ilu hu ben derega pechusa, as if you're, at a lower level. Ukamai, and here's the source in Chumash. V'yatzalti min haruach degabe Moshe. In the Chumash, Moshe is dealing with us unruly Jews, and we're not happy with the man. We want to eat meat. And they start
The
screaming.
birds, right? What
We
is it
want
called?
meat, we want meat. And
That's
Moshe says to God, I can't give them meat. And the understanding is because he's from such a high level that he can't relate to meat. You know, man he can relate to, it's from his Philly spirit.
Right.
So Hashem's advice to him is, take 70 elders, and then he uses this expression, I will bring down or emanate from you your spirit unto them. And the idea of the emanation is, Moshe hasn't lost anything, but something of him has been distilled and flowing out to the others. And that's Atzilus.
That's what,
Atzilus. Atzilus, on the one hand, is total godliness, but in a way that's somewhat distilled so that someone can...
What's the shirish of the word?
Atzil.
What is the
Atzil, to
translation?
Emanate or descend. Yes, that's it. Yeah. Okay. So he said to Moshe, and that's why the 10 spheros of Atzilus are called tikkunim. Remember, tikkunim are a certain kind of lavush, a certain kind of a garment, but very close to the skin, very close to the essence. Atzilus is close to the essence, right? It says, the Zohar says in Atzilus, Ihu b'chayehi chad. He and his life force are one. There's hardly any gap, even though there's a huge gap, but relatively speaking, it's hardly any gap. So they're called the 10 tikkunim, which are levushim la'or ein sof, which are garments to the or ein sof, v'lei atzmis, and not essence. U'mikol makim, even though they're garments and not essence, from the flip side, ein levushim mamish. They're not real like clothes. They're more like takshit, like a piece of jewelry. So we call them tikkunim, the spheros of Atzilus. Whereas we'll see when you get to Biyah, the lower worlds, there's a much bigger gap, and those are going to be called levushim, garments. Vehine, next paragraph. Antu chad v'lei b'chushbon. Now this is more.
Wait, where?
The big letters. V'zehu.
Oh, ach.
V'zehu antu chad v'lei b'chushbon. We're back to Pasuk Eliyahu. He said about God, you are one, and without any number. She'enu nimna b'klal hayut spheres. You, yourself, and you, the I, you, are not counted at all in the 10 spheros. Next bracket. Because Kiyasavis Atzilus, to get the number 10, which is the 10 spheros of Atzilus, Huadidet Simsum or Ein Sof, comes to a contraction. So now moving from a discussion of pure essence, we talk about essence, how it relates to others. Now we're talking about the next stage. After essence comes Simsum, expression. After
Simsum means retraction.
I'm referring to, I like S's connotation. From pure being, God comes to some expression.
I understand.
The first level of
Simsum relates to
expression,
the process.
Yeah.
When he restricts himself in his essence, the manifestation is what's.
We're going to explain actually three
sorry.
levels.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's what I want to
We're going to
understand.
explain
Okay.
Atzmus, essence, Simsum, now, and then Parsa, which is a curtain between Atzilus and the lower worlds. But now we'll go to the second level.
Interesting. So Tzimtzum is the process, and
Now
then
let's see what
the veil is what I hate
Well,
to
let's
use
see.
the word veil.
We didn't learn it yet, so
Okay.
let's see
Oh, this-
what the Alter
okay.
Rebbe has to say. So Atzilus, this emanation, lowering of himself, who al yidei tzimtzum, is through a contraction of the Or Ein Sof, of the infinite light. V'yes makom poner v'cholo mamish. And the way it's described in the Kabbalah, the tzimtzum creates a free, empty space, an empty space.
Which is
Like
filled.
all the light which is filling everything, not
Okay,
everything we
listen,
know,
please,
but
please don't.
all that is he and nothing else. He sucks it in. He sucks it in and creates what's called an empty space.
And the empty space becomes filled, right?
And an empty space. What?
And the empty space becomes filled.
What's this
Relax. Learn.
I'm sorry. This is beautiful. This is
I don't
great.
understand it, but continue.
What do you mean, understand?
Maybe at the end, afterwards, you'll
Okay,
explain.
you will. Because he's going to ask questions on this as well.
I'm not understanding what we're referring to with creating empty space and he sucks
Simsum.
it in. I'm not sure like what that
Simsum.
is. Exactly.
It's puni, it's free and empty. Cholo means empty. Like choil. If something is choil, it's empty of kedusha.
Like creating a vacuum, theoretically.
No, I know, but
Publishing
what are
fund.
we talking about that's
How it
doing
could,
that?
what's your question? If your question is how could it possibly be empty, that's a good question.
Yeah, I
That's a
don't
good
understand what's
question.
going on here.
Good,
Like
so
there
we
is no.
just start.
Okay,
Simsum
fine.
is
Okay,
the action.
sorry. Okay,
We just start.
that's what I was saying. Okay, continue.
The Hisavis Biyah, and so that creates a tzilus, who creates the will. We called it a tzimtzum, which is characterized, metaphorically characterized by being called a free space, an empty space. And then we have, next level, Hisavis Biyah, the bringing into being of the next three levels, which are always grouped together because they're a whole different set of operations going on here. And what's going on there is called the Parsa, the curtain, right? The Parsa, what's the curtain do? The Parsa mafsik, it interrupts between Atzilus Libriya, from Atzilus to the lower world. Ubein B'ril Yitzir, and there's also a Parsa between Bria and Yitzir and Nasiya, etc. V'lei mokum ponai. So it's not the same idea as creating an empty space.
What do you mean by a parsa? Aren't they all connected?
Which all?
In order for there to be a flow through, there has to be one level at the end of one that connects to the beginning of the next one. What does a parsa mean?
What, a Parsa, see that curtain over there?
Yeah.
The sunlight comes through it. Doesn't it? Unless it's totally open.
No, it does, but
It
I get
does.
what you're saying.
Right.
I think.
What is the purpose of a parsa? Just to make a
To create
separation?
a different quality in the light.
Like
And in
a
our case,
prism.
For the emanation of the
prism?
light, or
You're
is it a
saying
veil,
like-
Rabbi?
Well, a prism is a different metaphor.
Not a
but
prism.
it's-
Sorry,
but
I
it's-
meant like, let's say like a film. Let's say, you
Well,
know,
we
you
like
have
parses because it's just it's
colored
something
cellophane.
will give you a different quality light from
Okay.
on the one side of the light of the cellophane as the other, right? Yeah. One side is white light, the other side is the color.
Because Hashem's essence would destroy the creation after Great Tzimtzum, would it not?
What? Me?
If Hashem's essence was totally manifest throughout creation,
There wouldn't be any
exist.
creation in the
There wouldn't
first
be any
place.
creation, so it's like a veil in a
Yeah,
way.
but that's the first. That's not the parsa. That's the
Okay.
Simpson.
Okay, after
The
the
major
Simpson, after the
thing,
Tzimtzum,
the major thing that creates what you call something, right? At Silas, is the Simpson, and we're just starting.
It would be
this, okay?
so cool if someone could build a 3D, massive 3D diagram
Of the,
of a representation of this. Like, I'm just thinking how cool that would be to have like light passing through a
sure
bunch
you
of
could.
different like parcels, like
speak
films.
to our friend.
And inside you see like
Speak to our friend
Rachel,
Alter Dutch.
Alter.
He's in charge of Torah visuals. You know Torah
Yes,
visuals?
yes, I
That's
know
what
that
they're
he was
doing.
working on it.
Making animated replicas, metaphors for all of this.
That would be so
And
cool.
Steve
He told me to
Friedman
come
is
by the office.
Yeah,
I wanted to
sure.
go in there. Yeah,
Well, that's their whole
keep
purpose.
forgetting.
Their whole purpose.
that is so cool.
But we're
I
just
wanna check
making it
out
real
what they're doing.
simple. You got a sun on the outside, a curtain in between. The light on the outside, you probably could get a nice tan. On the inside, you probably can't.
But you're
It has a
saying each
different
level
quality.
has a parsa in between.
So each level, from Or Ein Sof itself to Atzilus, we call Tzimtzum. From one level to another, all the way down, we call curtains.
Is a curtain, Rabbi,
Come on, let
a
him
filter for
explain.
light, or is it a
I
barrier?
have to insist.
Is it a barrier that's created?
Let him explain. After
Okay.
he's through,
Okay.
we can ask all the
I'm just,
questions we want.
I'm
okay?
imagining
We
in my
just
mind's eye.
began the story. Right?
Okay.
So we have curtains between Bria to Yetzirah, Yetzirah to Asiya, and before that we have a tzimtzum, an empty space is the metaphor, between Or Ein Sof and Atzilus. Okay, now he's going to explain. The Hefresh Sheben Parsa Lamokim Poni. What's the difference between a curtain and this notion of creating a free space, an empty space? Yuvin Behekta will be understood by talking about first let's talk and understand what the tzimtzum is. What's the tzimtzum in the Or Ein Sof? Kihine Or Ein Sof, the infinite light, Han Or V'Gilei Lias Eza Hispashis V'Hishavas Makar V'Chayas. Or is also light. Is already a light. It's not essence. Essence has no illumination. There's already a being. There's something coming out from him. So this Or Ein Sof and its revelation, since it's a flow and it brings into being the reality of the source. Now you can see that there's something coming from somewhere, right? It's Havas Makar V'Chayas, and there's something that has a source of the vitality. The Or Ein Sof Shabbat Smusoi, and the difference between the Or as it comes out and the Or Ein Sof which is in his essence. So b'chaynu b'chinas zeh sheyesh boy or lias meir, because the difference is this: there's a kind of light which irradiates, which illuminates, umispashit, and flows, lahavos or lahapias, to bring things into being and to create them. Okay, but it has a source before it came out, just like Chachma, just like Chesed, all the things we were talking about before they're manifest, they come from a place of Peshitus where there's no ray, there's nothing. The ray is what's going to bring both the hisavas, the being of the thing, that the thing becomes differentiated. You can now perceive things, and it's going to enliven them. And this is what it means, that there is the source of this enveloped in the Peshitus before it comes out into expression. This is what's meant by the expression. Before the world was created, there was He and His name alone. The name wasn't yet expressed. They were alone. He and His name were alone in essence.
You mean singularity?
That's the Ein Sof Be'atzma. That's the infinite one Himself, not the Or Ein Sof. The Or Ein Sof is a revelation from the Ein Sof. But that revelation has a source.
Makes sense.
And the nomenclature that we have for that, He and His name were one.
Got it.
Simplicity. Ushmoi, now when the name comes to tangibility, expressibility, comes to be perceived, that's the Or Ein Sof. So you have the Ein Sof Himself, and you have the Or Ein Sof, Shiba Atzmusai, but that's the light before it came out. It's the Or as it's in His essence. Shurach b'chinas Shmoi, which Shehu b'chinas Gilui. Name will become a revelation. Your name, will depict on someone else. John.
Is that a continual process?
John. So he turned his head. Right?
Jonathan.
Because he knows his name is John.
Jonathan.
I thought you were Jonathan.
No, I'm Jonathan. He's Jonathan. We're both Jonathan.
That's interchangeable.
That's how we were in Midwood together. Handy used to say, it was interesting, unless she tried to give a message by saying Jonathan and Jonathan.
Okay,
she was a bright lady.
So we have name in two different stages. Name as it's enveloped in the Ein Sof itself, and name as it comes out and is revealed and becomes the Or, the light, and the light has certain qualities, right? So, okay. So that's when the light comes revealed. The light has a potential to become realized, and when it's in the state of potential, we say Huva Shmei Bovad. He and His name were only, that's all there was. It has a potential to reveal the Mispashit, Kamay Ziva Shemesh, like the ray of the sun. Meha Shemesh comes from the sun. Shaziv hu sheyesh b'shemesh lahoy ala oretz. The ray is a light and irradiation from the sun, which comes down to the earth. And Hainu Guf HaShemesh, but the source is the body of the sun, Atzmai. The body of the sun is not called light. The body of the sun is called sun. Light is what comes out of the sun. So the body, so that's the mashal. Essence is like the sun, and or Ein Sof is like the ray of the sun. So it's a ray from the sun, and that's when it's called or. Kamesha Kosev, and it's written plainly. Vayikra Kemla or Yoyim. In Bereshis, God called the light day. Shayim Nikra or. Day is called light. That's why.
Interesting
Al
remnants.
Shema Hispashtis, because of its spreading out.
Interesting
Hispashtis
remnants
of-
too, Rabbi, what you just said there. That was a mouthful. I mean, not in a negative sense, in a very good sense. Because just as a manifestation in the creation of the universe and the light, there was light, so too by analogy to what you're saying here, the manifestation of Hashem, and you relate that. That's beautiful. It's a lot right there in what you just said.
Yeah. You bet it's a lot. So that's what it means. Vayikra Elokim or. He called the light. He called. You could also say he called out, called forth the light. And that's the drasha that I'm making up. Nikra or. Al Shem. Why is it called light? Al Shem Hispashtis or, because of the flow of the light, the hazid and the ray. Masha Meir B'Yayim, which shines by day. Masha Ein Kain. On the other hand, Atzmius Shemesh, the essence of the sun, Nikra Mo'er, is called the radiator, the source of light, like the sun. Mishakosef is written a pasuk, Shnei Hama'oire Segadoyle. Again, back to Bereshis, he created two
lights.
sources of light, the sun and the moon. The Kachu Be'or Ein Sof. So just as that's true in the physical world, there's a source of light and a light comes from it, so it is in the Or Ein Sof.
That's interesting because we said that that the light, right, is not really the essence itself. It's just an emanation of the essence, and in the essence there is no light.
Right.
Could you imagine what kind of light the moon would give off if it had its own light? Because
Because why? That's what you're.
essentially, when Mashiach comes, first of all, there'll be a light that's revealed that hasn't been revealed before. And we do know that the moon did have its own light, but and according to the Medrash, the moon complained about the sun, and then Hashem took away the light from the moon.
And he shrunk the moon.
And now the moon receives its light from the sun, and it bounces off this, like, the
Which is
whatever.
right.
Anyway, so...
Like Joshua Ben Nun and Moshe Rabbeinu.
Right. So, but what I'm saying is, if in essence, the sun itself, right, is just, the light that we're seeing is just a radiation, it's just radiating from the essence of the sun, right? And the sun itself on the inside is like, just like the moon has no light.
No, I don't understand that. Can you explain that?
Weren't we had mentioned before
We're saying,
that...
go ahead.
No, you could say it better, please.
I don't know.
I think you get what
It's
I'm
not-
saying.
In other words, that inside the sun
It's
has no
not that
light.
it's wait a minute, but it's
Oh, I
not that
understand the
listen,
analogy
it's
you're
not
drawing.
like the sun has no light. It's like essence of God has within it the power to emanate, but until it emanates, we don't see light.
Right.
The sun itself has the power to emanate.
To emanate,
It's a
and
source.
it's emanating.
And then it emanates.
But so does the
So
moon.
does the moon.
But the moon is
That-
not able to emanate
that's
yet.
And the Rabbi Rishav talks about this.
Unless
It's
Hashem
all
took away-
light and I-
unless
I just got
Hashem
very
took away-
excited.
It's very exciting.
Unless
Okay.
Hashem
You
took
can
away
learn
the
it. You can
ability
learn
of
it in
the
9 days
moon to emanate.
about the light of the moon, how the light, the moon, very. I mean, the moon. I mean, what you're saying is very deep. That the moon has light. It's just God did something so that the light isn't.
Did God do something
isn't
wouldn't,
Sealed
or did
for
God
him.
take it
It's
away,
not
Rabbi?
real.
That's the question.
Hmm?
If God quashed the essence of the light in the moon, or did he just do something so it wouldn't be revealed? That's
The latter.
It's not revealed.
The latter.
So it was just not revealed.
Because it says about the future, the moon will be restored.
That implies
to the capability of the sun.
Midrash. That's interesting. That implies to be a radical transformation of
That got me
reality.
very excited.
Good. I'm glad. Makes me
But
really
also
happy.
because the moon is feminine, very much.
Oh, because the
And
moon
so
receives the light from the sun. Is
the
that why it's
moon,
feminine?
no, but the moon is also, women are very much in
don't
touch
know
with the
what
moon. The lunar cycle, all of that is very whatever. So it's feminine, and so when Mashiach comes, the light of the moon will be whatever. It's just beautiful.
The women will be expressive.
Well, the
Rather
woman,
than
is
simply
it's
receptive.
not just the woman. I don't mean in a pejorative sense, but I always said the female version is usually the receiver, right? In a way, the
Yeah,
feminine
but you're saying
version
something
in a receiver. I don't mean in a
that's-
negative sense at all. So forgive me.
No.
No, I'm saying,
It
and,
is
and that gentle receiver, like holding. It's not necessarily. My mom was worse when I was a kid, and she raised me alone. She remarried, so it's not a negative sense. But it's that she's one that's the tenderness, the warmth. The receiver that holds the family together, and the man was considered the outgoing, the aggressive
Yeah,
tradition.
but I got news for you.
So I'm
But
wondering
women
if
are
you think-
actually
Women are the
Gevura.
powerhouse of the family.
No, that's true. That's exactly what I said.
Yeah.
No, I didn't say they aren't. The opposite.
And men have
Right.
to be learned that.
No, I didn't say that, Arnold. You're misinterpreting.
We get your point. There's
I'm saying
more
there's a
nurturing.
receptor
There's more
and a giver, the
nurturing.
receptor and
Right.
a giving relationship. That's all. So what she's saying is, in the end, the woman would turn back to also. And I'm not saying women don't give. I'm just saying in the traditional paradigm of how we think of a giver and a receiver.
Yeah.
Right. The woman is the one that receives and puts her arms around and embraces. Right, with a family, with children.
Right, I understand what you're saying.
I'm
but-
not saying in the sexy sense.
No, we understand. But the interesting thing now, and this is why it's so much the times of Mashiach, is you
And that's
see
the
how
strength of a
much.
woman.
One second, you see how much on a very practical level in the world,
Yeah,
the
women.
masculine and the feminine is literally like becoming like there was all the women's rights movements that started many years ago, but now it's come to a place where the women are big powerhouses now, and it's shifting. The shift is happening.
My Bubby told me. My Bubby was from Europe. She told me it was that way in Europe also. She was the money earner.
She earned the money.
And she ran the store.
Right.
It's crazy.
Is it
All right,
a
we go
pejorative
further?
way, Rabbi, to think about even if you look at the physical relationship of male and female, the physical. I mean, Hashem creates it. I don't mean it is the a woman can be an aggressor, and of course, God, we should all have equal rights and equal pay, things like this. But the giver-receptor relationship, even, excuse my expression, but even in sexual relations when people are married.
We understand.
I mean, a woman is a receptor of a man, and she
Right.
receives a man into and she, if she, God, she consents and she's in its relationship with the two become one, the unity. So the moon is the receiver of life from the sun. But you're saying, I don't think the role of the moon is going to function in the end, but I think it's a symbiotic relationship where they're built together.
No,
I think that's
actually,
why Hashem
Chassidus says
created.
that the moon's light will be even greater than the sun.
Of
when
course, I
Mashiach
didn't say a
comes.
woman's light's not going to be. I'm saying in the
okay.
sense of giving.
No one's taking this personal.
Okay.
No one
Okay.
is taking this
It's
personal.
great.
It's
no
fine.
matter
Can we go
what
further?
what
Jonathan.
I'm saying.
Jonathan,
But even-
Jonathan.
Okay.
Can we go further,
Of
please?
course.
Okay.
So, we've done, now something else we want to know about Simpson. Sun is the radiator, we'll call it the Ein Sof. That's the metaphor.
Okay.
Sun is the Ein Sof. The ray of the sun is the Or Ein Sof, right? Now, what did the Tzimtzum affect? Top of the page. The Tzimtzum hoya be'or Ein Sof. The Tzimtzum was in the light. It didn't affect the Ein Sof. God himself, in essence, just like our essence doesn't change. He wasn't changed by the Tzimtzum. What changed, the whole Tzimtzum was about the light. Aval b'moyer, next bracket, in the radiator, which is the Ein Sof itself, la shayach Tzimtzum chas v'sholom. You can't say that the essence of God himself contracted, for a lot of reasons, and we'll see what he says. V'lei helam, and God himself is not concealed. Adarabah, on the contrary. What?
Is that upstairs?
Okay.
Sorry, somebody fell.
Does that mean a woman will become man in the future, Rabbi? And the distinction between the sexes will be eradicated, destroyed?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not.
I mean, that's how it can be twisted. I don't know what it means
No, it
anymore.
won't be eradicated at all.
I mean,
It's just
a
that
woman's
will
always been a
reveal-
source of light. She's been the greatest source of light. No one ever says she wasn't.
But it wasn't
softness and
revealed.
gentleness.
It wasn't revealed. So now it's.
I mean, in the gentleness and the softness which man didn't have.
Should
It
we
wasn't
move on?
built into his
Jonathan, can
being.
we please move on?
Okay, I'm sorry. Of course.
But in the radiator himself, which is the Ein Sof Atzma, lies shayach tzimtzum chas v'sholom. You can't say that he contracted, that the Ein Sof contracted. V'lo helam, nor did the Ein Sof become hidden. Adarabah, on the contrary, hamoyer hu b'hisgalus, the radiator is always revealed. V'lochein afilu tonikas, and this is I find this really powerful. Even tonikas, even little kids know sheyesh shon elokah motzoi. They know there's a God. So you
Right.
see what he means, that essence of God is always revealed. It's not like the ray, which is in front of our face, and we draw the curtain so the ray doesn't, but it's always revealed in the sense that we always are experiencing it. And the proof is a little kid, without any, seichel begins to corrupt. The undeveloped seichel, the pure, the essence of childhood is wonder. Wonder is really
Innocence,
predominant in
beauty.
childhood. And so children know that there is a God which is found. Even though they don't have understanding, but tefisa, and they can't grasp it. How it is, because there's no revelation of light. So I find this a really beautiful mashal for essence. Essence is always there, not tampered with at all, never concealed, but it's not in the manner of revelation that comes through understanding. It's something
Essence
that's
is
felt
not.
deep, deep, deep
Got
in
it.
the soul and the heart. And a problem with a disease I think we have today was losing the ability to listen to our heart and listen to our soul, not having the ears to hear, and rather
Eyes
being
to see.
preoccupied with our minds. Okay, so the essence is just that the revelation, which is deep in the heart, or deep in the essence, isn't grasped in the brain, and it's not revealed. But that it's not revealed in the brain or my senses or my understanding doesn't mean that it's not felt or that it's not found. It's there. And it's there, lamata kamay lamayla. Essence is down here below as it is above. Because it says, I think Zohar, Leis asar poni minoi, there's no place which is free of him.
What
Which
about that
begs the
vacuum?
question,
What about that vacuum?
which begs the question.
Oh, it's about to get there? Okay, thank you.
V'lachei nichra tzimtzum zeh mokim ponoi.
Mm.
So when we call it mokim ponoi, it's not because it's empty, it's because it's hidden. It's not grasped b'hasana. That's what, because it's impossible to say that there's any place which is empty.
Right, because when Hashem first created the world, it said that it was taihu b'vayhu, right? It was
Unformed
a
and void.
vacuum, right?
Unformed and void.
We
Well,
can't,
chaos.
but we can't even fathom what that looks like, because when we think in whatever Hashem created. That's our capacity of what we can imagine, right? We can't
Correct.
imagine anything before there was something. We can't
Mhm.
imagine
Right.
what that
Not
looks
in our
like. There
mind.
is nothing in our minds, because only what was created in the Torah can be in our minds. We can't
In our
imagine
minds.
anything beyond that.
But we have, Baruch Hashem, other faculties. I call them poetic faculties. The faculties of beyond say.
Yeah, but you can't. When I think of nothing, I think what a black. I think white.
No,
I think
Don't think
you
of
know.
that. Think of everything.
No, you're saying the absence.
Instead of nothing, think of
You're
everything.
thinking of
Everything?
nothing, you're thinking of the
Everything, which
absence.
is unfathomable.
Right.
You can't.
It's-
you
right.
can't touch everything. You can only touch with our intellects some things.
So it was a vacuum in what we consider a
So
vacuum, but nothing is
that's
devoid
the
of him.
point. It can't mean there was an empty space.
Right. There was no empty space.
It's a vacuum from that perspective.
Hashem
You got it.
contracted himself to create
Oh, he says.
manifestations, isn't that what you're saying? But not a
He
vacuum.
says one more thing.
But I don't mean by vacuum directly, but by implication, it's a retraction that makes space, not for other things, but it's a reduction of the essence of his
It's
essence.
a
Is it-
constant yesh
we- we-
ayin. That's basically what he's saying. It's a like
Yeah.
an ebb and a flow, like the ocean.
It's a good
An
point,
ebb and
and
a
it's
flow,
continuous.
that kind of
That
thing.
means creation is continuous.
Just go a
also.
few
Right.
more. Just go a few
But
more
it's
words.
like the ocean, the waves that come back and forth. That
Go a
kind
few
of
more
thing.
words.
No?
So, yeah,
I'm sorry. I'm just
yeah. It's like
picking
an
up
ebb.
my own.
But what do you mean?
Mashallah.
You're marshal. The ebb and flow. What's ebbing and what's
What's
flowing?
the end of the teleological process, though? That
The
is
essence is
question.
never ever ebbing and flowing. It's just
No,
the
it's
ore is the light. Is
Right,
ebbing
the
and
light.
flowing. Right. So this is let's stay with this because there's one more phrase that's
Okay.
key. So therefore, back to the line that begins with lamata kamay lamayla parentheses.
Mhm.
V'lachei nechra tzimtzum zeh mokim ponoi. And that's why we call it an empty space, a free space, and an empty space. Pirish, meaning what? Shehu cholol v'rik min ha'or. It's empty of the
Of the light.
beam, the light. She'ein boy or his galus klal. There's no light and there's no.
I thought he was going to say that there is this untouchable place that we cannot describe,
And which is present everywhere.
but
And,
there's
and
no
one more, and
right,
is felt in our soul. Yes,
not on a conscious level.
like the kid.
Okay, one second. When he was talking about this, remember when I asked you before, and I was like, okay, I'll wait until I understand the whole. He sucks it in. What was that analogy of? Like,
I said he sucks.
right? Okay, but I don't understand that. So what does that mean? Like it?
Okay, you have a sun. Imagine the sunlight.
Okay,
The sun's over there, right outside, and I'm
you
sitting
want to
here,
absorb,
and the ray is coming into me, right?
right?
And I feel the ray. I see it. It's begilui, right? Now the sun takes it back. Imagine
Okay,
the sun sucks it back, right? That connotes something which leads us to a misunderstanding.
that's
Because
what they call a retrograde. No.
But it would give you a
Yeah.
misunderstanding that
Right.
that essence of God is not present, right? Because he sucked it back.
Would that be a
into
retrograde?
himself.
That's like, you know, when they say like Mercury's in retrograde or whatever they say in the
I don't
Mazalas,
really-
that
I don't
whole
Be a
know.
thing.
retraction
I
and
don't know.
manifestation,
I don't
if I look at it metaphysically, and a retraction and manifestation at the same period of time in a way that we could theoretically understand through through creation, not a creative process. But that's just how I would
I'll
envisage it.
put it very simply, that the metaphor of our value, when I said suck back, is that the ore is no longer revealed, and the moer is the only thing that is the source of radiation, but you don't. It's no.
When does he
it
do
has
this?
no
What
revelation.
is the process of that? Why
Well, it
didn't
starts the other way, right? He's like the sun. Imagine the sun.
Okay.
If you could say such a thing, physically you can't. The sun exists as a potential for light.
And it
And
shoots
then-
it
and
out
then
and then
shoots
brings
it
it
out,
back.
Right, it shoots it out and brings it back. Right.
If it
it
did that for
never
1
has-
second, we'd cease to exist.
So
Of
Hashem
course it
alienates
exists.
himself
It was
from
just
himself.
existence,
Right.
Because existence is particularized, particularized. Existence depends on a yesh.
Right. But I'm saying even the sun itself, if it would just
Oh, just the sun, of course.
forget
That's why
it,
it's
the
used as a
earth would be
mashal.
gone.
Earth would be gone.
If
Right.
Hashem alienates from himself, we feel
Now, it
the
wouldn't,
essence of Hashem.
Right.
it wouldn't really be gone. It would dry up, shrivel, whatever.
Right.
You know, get to be like an asteroid or who knows what.
Right.
But in the case of God, it would really be gone.
Right.
If Hashem alienates himself from himself,
What does that
creation,
mean? What does it
alienates,
mean?
he
What does it
alienates
mean?
from himself, from his essence in the creation. When we feel him in our heart as a child would, that's a direct connection between us and the essence of Hashem, the Ein Sof. Right, without any intellectual processing
Right.
or differentiation. That's the mahut,
Right.
that's the feeling, that's the linkage. And that's, I think, what you were trying to drive at.
Yeah,
and
and
the
I wanna
alienation
make-
from himself, from his essence, is what you might think is symptom. And I don't know if it's for the creation of a physical world,
It is.
or if it's so his physical beings that he created by understanding. But if the seeds and the essence of Hashem's Ein Sof are inside of creation, then eventually they're going to seek to return to the source. That's my perspective, teleologically. And that would be the ultimate purpose of creation.
That is the purpose of creation, to
At least
be
I
a
think about it
yesh,
when I
to
was
be a
in high school.
yesh, and to long and work to experience the essence, and to bring it into revelation.
And that would be and so eventually you could say, what is the end of the process? Who knows?
Right.
And that is a mental unification with the Kadosh Baruch Hu.
So when we say that that the tzimtzum is the metaphor of an empty space, we mean it's empty of any revelation. I don't see the ray. I don't see the ray
You're saying before the tzimtzum.
before the tzimtzum. Yeah. So yeah, he created an empty space, a place where revelation isn't happening. But that can't mean that he is removed from that, because that's impossible.
There is no way for us as beings to ever tap into that energy before tzimtzum.
But we have the essence inside of ourselves. That's what Rabbi was talking about with the child, with the implicit love and knowing Hashem exists. And that spark inside of it, and the desire to reunify with Hashem, with that spark inside of us seeking back Hashem, could be the process for all of creation, the impetus for the creation.
The reason I'm not going to
Sorry,
100%.
I shouldn't go there. Sorry, I did this
There's
in high school.
no way for us to experience that. We know that when Hashem gave the Torah, and we've learned this in
There is that,
Chassidus,
sorry.
right? When he gave the Torah, the first word of the Torah is Anoichi.
Mm-hmm.
Anoichi Hashem
Ananashis,
Elokecha.
right.
I have given myself over into the Torah.
Mm-hmm.
So, and again, it's not through logic, but through the avoida of immersing oneself in Torah, immersing oneself in tefillah, immersing oneself in mitzvahs.
Mm-hmm.
One begins to have some experience of the Anointing.
But the reason I'm saying this is because our relationship is primarily through that tzimtzum. Tzimtzum is for us. So there
Our
is.
creation is
One
result
second,
of that tzimtzum.
I just
Sorry,
want to.
sorry.
I just
Yeah.
want to get through the thought, because before tzimtzum, there is no way of us relating to Hashem.
There's no us
Right.
We wouldn't be in
So
existence.
that's why I'm saying that we can't tap in
to before the Tzimtzum.
to the before the tzimtzum, because the tzimtzum is that part of the relationship
Yeah,
with us.
But
Very
the spark
logical.
of what existed before the symptom is
Sounds
inside of
reasonable.
us, and that's
But you're
driving
saying that we can?
I'm saying we can because we have parts of us that are way beyond logic.
Right, because we have a piece of Hashem.
May I use the bathroom? Is that all
We're a
right?
piece of Hashem.
Yeah, always.
Thank you. I'll use your name. I'll get a good seat.
There's only one seat in the
I
house.
said I'll use your name. I'll get a good seat.
Okay.
Protects you.
All right.
But how you can't tap into that on a very, you know.
You're talking about things that I don't have any experience with. You have to ask, and neither have I learned to say what, like how deep is it, right? We know that we can tap into things that are beyond our ken, beyond our.
Not necessarily should we.
Some of them should, that's for sure. Right.
No, what I mean to say is like, okay, so there are this levels to learning Chassidus. I remember when I was younger, I'd be like, wow, this is amazing.
Yeah.
But I had no idea, like, honestly, like, what is the point? Like, okay, it's amazing to feel and to understand and to be knowledgeable and, you know. But so what? Okay, so now on a practical level, how do I tap into something like this where I'm conscious of that connection instead of just being on a spiritual trip, you know?
Early in
Like,
the class you had
well, that was,
amazing.
yeah. Well, the moon, that was like, okay, well, that made sense to me.
Right.
Okay.
But it sparked something deeper
Right.
than just, it was a nice idea. It just sparked some feeling.
Well, it gave me that hopeful feeling of like, wow,
Yeah.
something new is going to emerge. And
So,
it's,
that's the deal,
Right.
to immerse oneself enough where God has placed his essence to come into some contact with,
Right.
with some of it.
right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Where are we? Oh, that's what we just said. That's what we just finished the component.
Okay.
Should we continue next week or should we
Yeah.
go a little further? Continue next week?
Yes. Just can we recap? What was the beginning of what we were learning and how we were trying to understand?
Okay, fine. We came from Pasuk Eliyahu. We said that Eliyahu opened up and he said, "Antu de apikas esotikun." You are the one who brings out 10 tikkun.
But what does this have to do with Parshas Vayerah? That's what I'm trying to understand.
Because it's going to have a relationship to Hashem's going down to Sodom. We will understand after we understand this and some more things. Why does he have to go down?
Right. Because the word in the pasuk was that
Everything is
Hashem
in
went down to
Erdogan.
Sodom. Erdogan.
I will please let me go down and see if the cry, if what's going on there indicates a certain cry, if the cry indicates something really what's going on. And when you look at the pasuk. Pasuk is.
I think it's so crazy how like what's going on in the world is really matching up with the parshas. Like it's
Sodom.
Just the parshas of the week is just.
You bet.
It's,
So that's where we're driving to. Now we've laid the groundwork. Why have we laid the groundwork? Because we've learned, there's an essence of God, right? But when it comes to the creation, he does in a certain way lower himself, right?
right.
And he lowers himself through the 10 spheros, first in Atzilus, and then in Biyah, and he emanates light. And we've already called that light a lowering himself. So we've laid the groundwork about what it means that Hashem lowers himself. But the question is, so he lowered himself and he made a creation. He envelops all of that creation. Everything happens in that creation with divine providence. And we're going to quote an expression, Goli v'yadua. Everything is revealed and known in front of him. So why does he have to go down?
Right.
Well, if everything revealed and known to Hashem in front of him, why does he have to go through this process?
Why does he
Go
have to
down to
go
Sodom.
down to Sodom to see what's happening?
To Sodom,
Doesn't he
you
know
said?
what's happening?
To Sodom, you said?
To Sodom.
Sodom.
Sodom. This is all about Sodom.
I thought you were talking about Sodom, or talking about the fact that Hashem has manifested himself and created all these different levels of worlds.
that's the analog that he lowers himself in order to create. But after all of that's said and done, he encompasses everything all the time. There's no place which is free of him. So what does it mean that he has to go down and take a look?
Why the analogy to Sodom?
No, we're talking.
We're talking
Sodom
about
is
the
in
Parsha,
it's a
Parshas
Parsha.
Vayerah.
This week's Parsha.
Okay.
Hashem goes down to Sodom to see if what's going on there is something he has to deal with or not. So,
Because maybe that's in contradiction to his underlying essence, and the process of creation and growing closer to Hashem will be said.
well,
cool.
come back next week.
Okay,
for
same
the
time, same
continuation
channel.
of the story.
Don't touch that back. Don't touch that same back time, same back channel.
Yeah, I really wonder. We'll see how many people that I've got. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people here. I wonder how
That was a
many.
very good class, Rabbi.
I
Thank
wonder.
you.
Well, it's very good material. You know,
Very
this is
good.
the best. is the best material
This
you
was
could
great,
hope to have.
and I like to
So-
listen. So I'm just looking because I listen. I can use my mind's eye in my